Today's devotion is called Positioning Reformers, and we are on January 31st. That means we are on the very last day of January, and our morning rinse includes 2 Chronicles 34 through 36, which is the last 3 chapters of the book of 2 Chronicles. So we are ending this month. Go ahead and read those 3 chapters. Come on back and we'll go ahead and talk about it. The featured verses of today are 2 Chronicles 34, 1 through 3. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. He did right in the sight of the Lord and walked in the ways of his father David and did not turn aside to the right or to the left. For in the 8th year of his reign, while he was still a youth, he began to seek the God of his father David, and in the 12th year, he began to purge Judah and Jerusalem of the high places, the Asherim, the carved images, and the molten images. So my family went through a season where we became foster parents. My kids were 9 and I think 12, and then my oldest was in her 20s. When we started doing this journey, we were long-term placements to a sibling set of 3. That doubled our children to 6. Now, granted, my oldest daughter, Haley, she was in and out, so she was at college some and working some, and so she wasn't full-time at the house, but there were times where, like during the summers and stuff, she was there full-time. And so we had 6 kids in the house. The youngest boy's name was Brian. And we got him, I think, when he was 7. And so we had him during his youthful years, including while he was 8 years old. And I remember events with him during that time frame. Like, we tried to teach him how to ride a bike. He cooked a lot with me in the kitchen. He did actually let us know during that time that he wanted to be a chef someday. And I often wonder if that has actually occurred. But I remember cooking with him, and I remember in the morning time watching him get on the school bus. But there was one thing that I remember about that season in our life. I had this big, huge van that fit all of the kids. And there were a lot of times where I would put this song on while we were driving. And this song was called Hall of Fame. And the words in this song included be a champion, be a champion, be a student, be a teacher, be politicians, be preachers, be believers, be leaders, be astronauts. And it kept saying be champions. I remember blasting this song. And I also remember when I was playing it, there were times where I would cry because I want it with my whole heart for my children to know that they're champions. During that time of fostering, Brian was so little back then. He was really short. And he just seemed so tiny. And when I think about what I did with Brian during the age of 8, it just was like little kid stuff. And yet this was the same age as Josiah was when he was put into a position as king. You know, and unfortunately, Josiah never got the chance to meet Hezekiah, his great-grandfather. But somehow God passed on Hezekiah's godly legacy to him because, you know, there were 2 generations in between Josiah and Hezekiah. Those 2 men were a lot alike in some ways, and both had beautiful relationships with God. They were passionate reformers and made brave efforts to bring the nation back to God. And it is recorded, however, that Josiah's dad and his grandfather did not follow God's ways. So there were 2 generations of influence that Josiah had. But despite this influence, Josiah continued to obey God, becoming a reformer just like his great-grandfather. God can teach us through examples such as Josiah to trust him and to still live for him no matter our surroundings. And he will help us through anything if we seek him. I don't know where Brian is now. And I don't know where his 2 sisters are. When we no longer were fostering and when we moved, he was adopted shortly thereafter. Somehow, even though we may never see them again, I am going to believe that God will allow our influences in their lives to someday surface so that they will be reformers, just like Josiah. I say all of this to say that Josiah did not necessarily have the godliest influence around him. Somehow, some way, somebody was in his life that taught him God's ways. I know that there are people in your life that you have influenced. I got an email probably about 15 years ago. It's been a long time, maybe 20. And this email was somebody who I was in grade school with. Or it wasn't an email, it was actually a Facebook message. She had found me on Facebook and said, "Is this Anita Heinz?" That was my maiden name. "Do you remember me from back in grade school?" And I did. I remembered her. And she said, "All through school, I watched your life. And I never was a Christian, but I saw the things that you stood for. And I saw your life. And I wanted to send you a message and tell you that I'm a believer now because of how you acted in school. And you may have been teased, and you may not have been the most popular kid, but I'm a Christian because of you. I know that there are people that are going to be reformers because of you and the changes that you make in your life, because you're digging deep and doing things in your life that you weren't doing last year maybe. And that you are a champion, and you, as you're making your life changes, will create reformers. And I'm believing in my heart that I will someday see Brian again, just like I got reconnected to my former classmate. So I'm going to give you a challenge for today to dig deeper. This challenge is, I want you to ask God to help you position the next generation of reformers who need your godly influence. Help you make changes in your life as you end this first 31 days. Ask God to help you and to strengthen you to continue moving forward, to be a change for the reformers out there. Who are you going to influence? Then tonight, pull out your journal and write down who in your life needs you to position them for influence. We all need people to push us, to better us. And I'm encouraging you to write their name down. Who in your life needs you to position them for influence? And how we do that is we make changes in our own life. Stay on the course, because you never know what kind of reformer they will be. And as you are living a life of being a champion, play that song over those in your life, because they will be champions too because of you. I hope that you are encouraged by this last episode in January and this last episode in 2 Chronicles. You know, as we close out this book, you have to realize too that the Chronicles is chronicling all these kings. And there were kings that came after Josiah that did evil in the sight of God. And they closed out the Chronicles with that. Yet it doesn't have to end that way. You can be a positive reformer for other people. And so I hope you enjoyed this message as far as Chronicles is concerned. And if you still need a printed copy of your Rinse, Reflect, Repeat devotional, you can go into the show notes, and you can also go to anitacordell.com and pick up your copy of both the devotional as well as the companion journal. The next book that we're going to cover is Colossians. We're back in the New Testament. So this is the beauty of going through alphabetically, where we cover some things New Testament, some things Old Testament, and it's all intermixed together. Until tomorrow, keep rinsing, reflecting, and repeating.